How you doing? This is Tom Loy with IrishIllustrated.com and 24/7 Sports. Earlier this week, I asked our Notre Dame subscribers for a ton of questions related to recruiting, the ins and outs, who's next to commit, all of that stuff, and you guys delivered in a big way. So I want to dive right into it. Let's get to the questions, and we got a bunch of them, so this is going to be a lot of fun. First one's from PA Irish 5. Thanks for the question. In the same way that Freeman will learn a lot as a first-year head coach on the field, what do you think will be some lessons learned from a recruiting perspective following year one? For me, I think it's important to continue looking at name, image, likeness. NIL is going to be a big, big factor. We've already seen it on the recruiting trail. I think for Notre Dame, they just got to continue to adapt and adjust. I know Marcus Freeman talks about that all the time, especially when it comes to football and the on-field. Let's look at the off the field. They got to continue to adapt and adjust to NIL and just really focus on how they can get better, how they can get more involved, because they really need to continue to be competitive. I'm not saying you need to deliver bags of cash to kids because I don't believe in that, and I think that's something that may happen, but it's just not something that we need to be watching for and doing on that kind of front. But also stick with what got you here. Notre Dame has one of the best classes in the country. They're doing a great job when it comes to recruiting, and Marcus Freeman has these guys rolling. So focus on what got you here, but also focus on what makes Notre Dame special. It's a lot of fun. So I think that's probably the biggest lesson. Just continue building on NIL, but also focus on what got you here. Next question from Caleb Hansel, 2016. Have any of the weekend events, such as Steve Wiltfong's Crystal Ball, changed my perspective, my feelings on Jeremiah Love, the four-star running back? Look, I mean, he's visiting for Marshall. That's big. I think that Notre Dame's been in this one, either the leader or co-leader for a very long time. So never once did I say this is a done deal. He's ending up elsewhere, and never once did I say that he's definitely going to land at Notre Dame. I'm just not comfortable yet to put in my crystal ball pick for him to land at Notre Dame. I know it's come out. I know that his dad told Wiltfong Notre Dame's the leader. I'm just leery about a couple trips. He's supposed to get back to Texas A&M, supposed to get back to Oregon, or at least those are trips being considered behind closed doors. Right now, the only thing that I know for sure is that he's going to get back to Notre Dame. That's important. If all goes well, you never know. Could we see a commitment? Could we see a new crystal ball pick? That's really what I'm watching. Inside the Goog, Notre Dame feels optimistic. I wouldn't say they feel confident that they are the outright leader and that this kid's a slam dunk. But I know Dylan McCullough is doing a great job, doing great work. So it really wouldn't shock me if in the next few weeks, myself, Alan True, 24/7 Sports Midwest national analyst, if we join Wiltfong on the crystal ball, but right now I'm just not ready to put it in quite yet. Next question, we got BWAC 2019. Who's a kid you think ND should be recruiting right now that they aren't? I've talked about this kid before. 2023 quarterback Cal Swanson out of Oklahoma. He's currently committed to Illinois. This kid is a terrific athlete. He can contribute in the run game. I know Tommy Rees loves guys that are athletic, dual threat guys. This kid throws it at a high level. He's super competitive. I loved his first week game film that came out. I'm just a big fan of this kid. I saw him earlier this summer, and I really like what I see out of him. Obviously, there's a lot to play out when it comes to class of 2023 quarterback recruiting, but specifically asking me for a guy to watch that I think that I personally would start targeting if I was Notre Dame, Swanson would be my guy. But obviously, we've talked about quarterback recruiting in 23, so we got some things that, we'll let it play out. DMB 346, how do you feel about Tyler Buchner heading into the season? I'm a fan. You guys know that. I've talked about Tyler Buchner for the last couple of years. I think he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country coming out in the 21 class. I think he's a big-time talent, and I think he's going to put that on display Saturday night. I'm not saying he's going to be perfect, but I do feel confident that Notre Dame is in good shape with him at quarterback. They could have hit the transfer portal. There's a couple guys they could have gone after, including a guy like JT Daniels that's currently at West Virginia that I feel like if Notre Dame would have pushed and made an offer, he would have landed there. But that's the kind of confidence they have in Buchner. It's the confidence I have in Buchner. So, I feel good about Tyler heading into the season. Irish Fan 3 asks, if you had to put money on it, does Carr reclassify? He's referring to class of 2024 quarterback CJ Carr, who's currently committed to Notre Dame. Does he reclassify, and if so, what do you think that does for his long-term development? My gut feeling is that he does reclassify. I haven't always felt that way. I know that I was kind of banging that drum early, and a lot of people kind of scoffed at it, said it wasn't realistic, said it wasn't going to happen, there's no shot. Meanwhile, all my sources were telling me that it's definitely something that's possible, something that's being discussed behind closed doors. So my gut says that he does reclassify. I think that he's ready for the next level. Academically, he'll set himself up for at least for that decision. So it's going to be in his hands. If he wants to do it, I'm sure Marcus Freeman, Tommy Reese would be more than happy to welcome him to the class. But that's just kind of my gut feeling based on the interactions with people. But I also know that he's not a guy that wants to be a distraction for his high school team. He wants to go out there and do what he can to lead his team to a state championship. He is a team first guy, not a me first guy. So if something does come out, I think it's going to happen behind closed doors before it does actually come out publicly. So we'll see what happens. Everybody's just got to be patient and wait and go from there. Regarding his long-term development, I think he's ready for college football. I think that if things go well this year and he produces like I expect him to, and he has the year that I expect, I think he's going to be more than fine, more than ready. Come in, battle for that, most likely that number 2 spot behind Tyler Buckner again next year. So we'll see what happens. Jabowski, if CJ Carr does reclassify, who are the quarterbacks in the class of 24 to know? Julian Sain is a guy that we've talked about a ton. He's a guy that I'm a big fan of. I think he's a 5-star in the 24 class. No brainer, in my opinion. But to be honest, there hasn't been contact on that front in quite some time. So they would have to kick the tires. But again, speaking hypothetical, if CJ does reclassify, I would expect Reese to make a run at Sain. He likes him a great deal. Jake Merklinger is a top 100 quarterback out of Georgia. If I remember correctly, he did camp at Notre Dame this summer. I could see them showing some interest. I thought he was pretty solid there. As long as I'm not mixing him up with somebody, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Mabry Medower is a kid out of Texas that I like a lot, but so he's a 24 to watch. Ryan Puglisi was a guy that camped at Notre Dame that I was a big fan of. I liked him coming in to camp, and I liked him on tape, but he was way better than I expected, and he is a guy that if they can't get back in with Julian, that if CJ does reclassify, I would like them to make a run at Ryan because I think he's one of the more underrated 24 signal callers in terms of the national rankings. Jabowski with another one, best guess at the next 2024 commitment for Notre Dame. Honestly, man, I think that's a little too early to kind of dive into. I think we got to look at who sets up a visit to come back to Notre Dame early this fall. These guys want to come back for a game day visit, and then we'll see if they kind of fall in love with the place. If they're close, they want to take that trip, and then they jump on board. But a few names that I'm watching, 4-star offensive lineman Gerby Lambert out of New Jersey. I think he's a guy that he's a guy that I'm probably – I wouldn't say that he's a heavy Notre Dame lean. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Gerby's from Massachusetts. I'm going back and forth on that one. He's not a guy that I think is a heavy Notre Dame lean. I'm not saying that they're 100% out front for him, but I think that they have a really good shot there. And I think Harry Hiestand likes him enough. He's making that early push that it's going to be tough for him to say no to Notre Dame. So he's a guy to watch if he can get on campus. 4-star cornerback Caleb Beasley is one to watch. 4-star safety Josiah Brown is a guy that I think Notre Dame, he sits high on Notre Dame's list, and I think he's got a lot of interest in Notre Dame. Let me think here. Who else? 4-star wide receiver Emmett Mosley, double legacy. I think he's got a ton of interest in the Irish, just about getting him back on campus. 4-star running back Aeneas Williams, I could see landing at Notre Dame. Anthony Specca, 4-star linebacker, is a guy that early on I projected Notre Dame to land. Now I'm a little on the fence. I'm hearing a lot of smoke about Michigan. I think Mike Elston's the lead recruiter there. He's doing a really good job, so watch out for Michigan. But if he does get back to Notre Dame early this fall, watch out for them. 4-star edge, Jayshon Ross is a guy that I think that Notre Dame's doing a really good job for. Jacob and Gerard Smith, 4-star defensive linemen. Those guys, again, strongly considering Notre Dame, and Notre Dame likes them a lot. TJ Lindsey, a 4-star edge, or maybe a 3-star edge, is a guy that Al Washington likes a great deal. Notre Dame thinks he's one of the more underrated guys in the country, so watch out for him. I don't necessarily think 5-star defensive lineman Justin Scott is too close to making a decision. Ideally, he gets back to Notre Dame this fall, and you never know at that point. And then lastly, I'd probably single out 4-star edge. Gabriel Williams is a guy that I think Notre Dame's in good shape for, but again, it all comes down to visits. Drew 2000, curious if the Reeder family is still a group that could help with the Keon Keeley recruitment. They seem to have great friendship. Look, I think Keon Keeley is going to go somewhere else. I think Notre Dame did all they could to keep him in the class. It's just not going to work out, and I think barring a change of heart, I just don't see this one working out for the Irish. I think they'll make one little run, but it'll be more about Keon making that reach out to Notre Dame. hey, maybe I'm having second thoughts. But until something like that happens, I think that ship has sailed. Um, Jerbowski asked again, how do you feel about Bowen this week sticking with Notre Dame? I still believe Notre Dame keeps him in the class. I've said that for a while. I think that they're going to be tough to beat. I know Oklahoma and Texas A&M are very much in play. He's supposed to get back to all three schools at some point this fall. He's going to be at the Clemson Notre Dame game in South Bend. I said it. I said if they got out of the summer and he didn't decommit, then I like their chances. I still expect him in this class, but one visit could change everything. So we'll have to see what happens. Irish NGR. When do Plan B guys get identified, and do they have a plan at all positions? Notre Dame has Plan B guys identified. I definitely think that sometimes they may be a little late to move on from their top tier guys, but to be honest, they want to make sure the top guys are going to go elsewhere before doing so, before they completely shut down and move on. I know everybody looks at Dante Moore and why didn't they move on from that, but they got to put some stock into the trust these guys. They got to trust these guys, and they're top targets. They're guys that they've developed relationships. So if they're telling them one thing, I know that all the smoke is out there. It's just hard to not take a kid's word when you put a lot of trust in them. So I think that'd probably be something to watch, and maybe them pivoting quicker. But they're going to recruit guys really hard, regardless of how many fans want them to jump ship. But the Plan B guys are identified, but they're going to stick it out with the top guys. Marcus Freeman wants these guys going toe to toe, and just maybe a little longer than they probably should have. But we'll see what happens. Irish and GR has another one. Other than Bowen and any other commits, who are you concerned about? I'm really not concerned about anybody in this class at this point in terms of decommitting and flipping or anything like that. So, yeah, just kind of nip that one in the bud. I feel good about the rest of these guys sticking. Pit and Poll. How has Notre Dame's recruiting strategy changed under Marcus Freeman? Have you noticed any trends in 24 that differ from what was done previously? It's really hard to explain what's different about Marcus Freeman and the recruiting strategy. It's just different energy, different vibes, different feel. They're just relentless. Great group of evaluators. They're working as one one unit without any issues inside the Goog. I really like that about them. In the past, there might have been some headbutting here and there, but not this staff. They really recruit as a team. What I like about it is that they have offensive guys helping with defensive guys helping with the offensive targets. And I really think that comes down to the respect they have for their head coach. So they're all going to work together under the same building with the same mindset. So that's probably the biggest thing. They're just working as one, and I think that's happening a lot more than in years past. David Lopez 5. The last 2 years we knew about before the season started that there was one freshman. There was 100% going to be special. 2 years ago it was Michael Mayer. Last year was Blake Fisher. Who do you got this year? On offense, I might have said Jadarian Price. I really like that kid. The former four-star running back is a freshman at Notre Dame, but he's out for the season. I like Tobias Merriweather, the receiver. I think he's going to make a lot of noise. He was really impressive as a senior, really all of his years of high school, and then he was terrific at the All-American Bowl. I think, especially with the wide receiver depth chart as is, I like Tobias Merriweather to make some noise this fall. Defensively, Jaden Mickey, no question. That cornerback has so much swagger to him, so much juice to him. He is a tremendous talent. He knows it. He's cocky, he's confident, but in all the right ways, man. I'm a big Jaden Mickey fan, so he's going to play often, play early this year. I'd like to see him get some burn against Ohio State. I think that moment is not too big for him, and he'll be ready. So he's a playmaker back there, which is nice to see. TJ from PA 70. What are the one or two position groups the staff is most aggressively recruiting for the remainder of this cycle? I definitely know they want to land another edge rusher. That's the key. They want to land a big name there. They need to add a quarterback. We've talked about that, whether it's going to be a reclassification from CJ Carr or another guy. I know Avery Johnson, the four-star quarterback, is a guy they really like a lot. So I'd like to see them add one there. And I'd like to see him get another receiver, which I could definitely see them doing that as well. NYC Leprechaun. Where do things sit with quarterback Kenny Minchey and Notre Dame if they don't get him? What does that do for Carr reclassifying? My sources believe that Minchey's going to stick with Pitt. He's definitely been receptive to Notre Dame. He's had some great conversations with them, and Notre Dame likes him a lot. He's a terrific player and a guy that they would have gone on earlier, obviously, with how things, depending on how things were going to go at the quarterback position early. But nothing set on that front. I don't think he's going to. I don't know. I don't see him flipping. I think he could potentially visit Notre Dame. If he does, all bets are off, and then he's definitely on flip watch because I know Pitt wouldn't be too stoked about that. So, but right now, everybody I've talked to is kind of like leaning towards him sticking, and his impact. I think that's what you're asking. I don't think his impact has anything to do with Carr's decision to reclassify or anything like that. So I really think if Carr wants to do it, regardless of whatever they do at quarterback, if he wants to come in 23, they would be stoked about it. Looks like you had another question. If Notre Dame gets 4 receivers this year, would they take another 4 next year? I'm really not sure on the plan next year, but I expect 4 receivers in the class this cycle. We'll see how things go moving forward. But like looking at the names, if you can get Ryan Wingo, Micah Hudson, Bradell Richardson to join Cam Williams, I don't see any way Notre Dame turns that down in 24. So yeah, I could see a case where you get back-to-back 4 receiver classes. Gavin Yu, last I heard, reported was that Notre Dame staff was torn on whether to continue recruiting Keon Keeley. Obviously, talked about him a little bit. I really don't think they're going to recruit him, push for him, unless he reaches out. That's the key. Keon, say Notre Dame goes into Columbus, gets a win this weekend. Keon's there watching the game, and he's impressed, and he just has this feeling like that's where I want to be. He reaches out to Notre Dame. They're not going to say no. Rich Irish 32. Tom, is the Myles Graham interest real? He's referring to Myles Graham, the 4-star wide receiver out of Indiana in the class of 2024. And do they have a chance to keep him from Ohio State and Alabama? He's very interested in Notre Dame. I'll actually be out to see him on Friday. Wanted to go to his game. I saw Bronte Johnson the first week and then C.J. Carr the second. So I'm excited to see Graham. I'll have more from him then, and you can expect video photos at irishillustrated.com this weekend. Hopefully it doesn't get buried by all the Ohio State content, but I may even hold off until Monday to post it. But with him, the Irish are remaining patient. They've offered. They liked him at camp. He's a terrific route runner. They just want to see more from him this fall, see what the speed numbers do. He didn't run extremely fast at the Notre Dame camp, so that gives them some pause. But they really do love the kid. He's a technician. Like I said, he's not a burner, which gives some schools pause, but this dude can play, man. His routes are up there with the best of the best in the country. Irish and GR, if Coach Freeman wins on Saturday, do you think ND can take the next step in recruiting and realistically compete for the top spot, or will NIL and the university's high standards with academics make that unlikely? Notre Dame's already taken the next step in recruiting, man. Now they just need to back it up on the field. Recruits. They're not looking for some 8-4 season, talking about potential and promise. They want to see another 9, 10 win, 11 win season. And this staff, this team, they're built for it. So I absolutely could see another 10, 11 win year this fall. I think they're going to keep that thing rolling. And I definitely think the prospects would be pleased with that outcome. But yeah, I don't see any way that Notre Dame's going to ever have the #1 class in America in an NIL era, which they're involved in, but not to the level of some schools. So I think top 3 to 5 is absolutely ridiculous, and that would work under Marcus Freeman. But it's just hard for me to predict a top #1 team as it comes to recruiting. It's just tough era for that with Notre Dame. CPA ND, aside from Bowen and the wide receivers, which 23 commit has the earliest on-field impact at Notre Dame? Kind of torn between 2 guys on this one. Christian Gray, cornerback. Adon Schuler, safety. Gray's going to be such a good corner, man. That dude is so long, so instinctive, so athletic. I actually think he could be a good safety as well. But I'm going to kind of lean towards Adon Schuler. He's college ready from a physical standpoint. I think he had 6 tackles, 2 pass breakups in his first game. He's just an animal back there. Love what he does in the back end of the defense, and he does so many things at a high level that I really do think he's one of the more underrated guys this cycle. SF Castillo, will Avery Johnson take an official visit to Notre Dame? TBD. It's to be determined. Some believe it's already in the works. Others are trying to make it happen behind the scenes. They got Tommy Rees coming after him, Marcus Freeman, Chad Bowden. You got Dylan Edwards as his friend and a guy that they've grown close, in-state kid. So he's working on him, but Tommy Rees is a big fan of this kid. Before he really blew up on a national stage, the Irish were all over him because of Tommy Rees, and obviously we've talked about it before, but the silent commitment from Dante Moore stalled that recruitment, and they stopped recruiting Johnson. But they were honest. They were upfront about it. They made it very clear that the spot was filled. They didn't want to kind of play games with him. So it's kind of I respect how Rees handled that, and I think the Johnsons do as well. C North 10, if Carr reclassifies, where do you see him starting in the 23 rankings? I don't want to speak for our rankings council and just throw something out there, but if we're speaking completely hypothetical and if he does in fact reclassify, for me, I would definitely, and I've seen a lot of the quarterbacks in the 23 class, I would have Carr listed at the bottom of the top 10 nationally in terms of the top 10 quarterbacks. And then in terms of like overall ranking nationally, I'd probably have him in the top 50 with a chance to go up. I think that's the floor. Top 50, bottom half of the top 10 at quarterback. And I think there's a chance to rise. Just see how things go this junior season, which obviously hypothetically would be technically a senior season if he did reclassify. And then obviously if they can make room for him in an All-American Bowl, All-American game, get him there, watch him compete against the others nationally. But yeah, I'd say just off the cuff, just my personal take would be bottom half 8 to 10 of the top 10 quarterbacks nationally in 23, and then like I said, top 50 nationally. Irish Cub 5, Tom, do you know any examples of any late mega quarterback risers in past years? If Carr doesn't reclassify, they'd have to go that route possibly. I'm not sure of any names off the top of my head in the past of guys that blew up. I want to say, I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I kind of remember, I think it was the summer before his senior year, I think C.J. Stroud started blowing up. I just remember the offseason where he kind of came out of nowhere. But, Tommy Rees has a long list of guys that he's watching, keeping tabs on. It's not like it's going to be C.J. Carr, Avery Johnson, Kenny Minchey, or bust in 23. So there's a couple other guys I'm watching. And like I said, Rees does his job at a high level. So they're not going to be left empty-handed or left at the altar, at the quarterback position in 23. Spider-Man 45, it seems like Marcus Freeman has raised the recruiting game this year, but there's always room to improve. Any recruiting strategies other schools are doing that they're not? Not really. I don't really have any complaints, to be completely honest. I'm a big fan of what they're doing and how they're doing it inside the Goog. They're in constant communication with guys. I think that's probably the biggest thing. They're setting the bar. They're moving the needle when it comes to the media side of things, the graphics department. It's very cool. It's next level stuff, and I've seen other schools even copy it. So just the fact that they're just relentless with what they do, they just get after it. They're constantly communicating with kids. They're showing love. They're not just showing love to one guy, but they're showing love to a group of guys. They may have only called a specific number of guys last night, but they also sent out graphics to the others. So it's really cool to see. Plus, Chad Bowden is a dude when it comes to this stuff, and his passion does not go unnoticed by recruits or really anybody that does what I do. Judge Arthur Vandelay, with 23 recruiting winding down, where do you think ND stands for some of the elite 24 recruits, specifically Ryan Wingo, Elijah Rushing, Peyton Woodyard? I definitely think Notre Dame's in the top group for all three, and by that I'm saying top 3 to 5, maybe even top 2 for a couple of them, but I would say top 3 to 5 for Ryan Wingo, the 5-star receiver. 5-star edge, Elijah Rushing, I would have them in the top 3 to 5. 5-star safety Peyton Woodyard, I'd probably have them in the top 2 with Ohio State. USC's lurking there as well. But it would have been nice to get Rushing on campus this offseason like the others. But ideally, you get all 3 of them back for a game this fall. Maybe even Clemson at the same time would be pretty cool. Mac341, who are the top 5 recruits? Who are the top 5 must-get recruits for Notre Dame in 24? It's all relative. For me, I want to see elite prospects that fit the program, guys that would make noise on a national level, guys that would recruit for the class, difference makers on the field. So I kind of have a criteria of guys that I would call must-gets. Just talked about in 5-star receiver, Ryan Wingo checks that box. Defensive lineman, Justin Scott, another 5-star. He checks that box. Peyton Woodyard, 5-star safety. He absolutely checks that box. Great fit. Cornerback Caleb Beasley, a 4-star cornerback. He would, obviously fit that criteria. And the 5th one for me would be Bronte Johnson out of Indiana, 4-star safety. Just seeing him in person, watching him run around, This kid is different, man. He is a very good receiver, but he has a chance to be a special safety. So I think those are 5 top 100 players. Would be massive wins. They're not slam dunks, so it's tough to call it a must get. But if you're trying to compete at the next level, if you're trying to get over the hump, these 5 would absolutely take you there. JP Wirt 70. Do you think Coach Freeman's mantra of, quote, I will be the lead recruiter for every recruit is sustainable long term? Absolutely, and you won't be able to tell me, you won't be able to tell him differently either. It's just how he's built, how he's wired. It's what makes him different, what makes him special. He's the man for the Notre Dame job, and he will 100% be the lead recruiter, the best recruiter in the building at all times. Wash ND, what is more likely for Notre Dame in 23 for recruiting at the quarterback position? Carr reclassifying, flipping Avery Johnson or Kenny Minchie, or somebody emerges during the 22 high school season. My gut feeling on that is probably that Carr reclassifies. That's kind of where I'm leaning at this point. I would probably give that the best odds, followed by flipping one of the other guys you listed in Minchie or Johnson. I'd probably slightly lean Johnson ahead of Minchie. And then lastly, I'd probably say that a guy emerges out of, I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but a guy that Notre Dame's been tracking for a while, he would probably be, that would probably be third on the pecking order. And the last question, Kay Beasley. Does the emergence of Jaden Mickey, Benjamin Morrison allow cornerback recruiting to become less of a priority in the class of 2024? No. No, cornerback's always going to be a position of a priority. All the positions across the board with Marcus Freeman running the show are going to be priority positions. Look, the fact of the matter is they want competition. Competition creates excellence, and that's what's going to help you, compete for a national championship. So they are going to, if you land the best quarterback in 23, you're going to want to land the best quarterback in 24, so on and so forth. That's just how these guys are built. That's what they want. It's what Alabama's done for years, and look how that's turned out for them. So that's what Notre Dame wants to do. They want to create competition. So guys emerge this fall. It's not going to change their stance when it comes to recruiting. That wraps it up for the Notre Dame recruiting mailbag. Like I said, I'm going to do my best to make sure this happens weekly. You guys were great. Really appreciate all the questions. This was a lot of fun. As always, I'm Tom Loy. Stay locked to IrisIllustrated.com on the 24/7 Sports Network, and I will see you guys next week.